Welcome everybody to our SKYPIEA podcast discussion, as well as the G8 filler arc
and Jaya.
And Jaya. All of that.
Great intro.
A fantastic intro.
You said the arc wrong. You said the word podcast wrong, which is what this is, and you improperly listed the arcs. That's a perfect start to the podcast.
That's why people love this channel. I'm telling you, the professionalism and eloquency in which I speak specifically.
So are you still doing the intro, or are
this
we
is
starting?
The intro. It's starting. That was the intro.
All right. And
today we will, like I just said, be talking about...
you can't just do it twice. That's not doing the intro.
Okay, the intro is...
Welcome, everybody, back to another BOLDcast One Piece discussion podcast review of the SKYPIEA Saga, containing the arcs Jaya, Sky Island or SKYPIEA arc, and the G8 filler arc. Lindsay, do you have a question you want to start us off with? Leave a like and subscribe.
I think my first question is not a Patreon-specific question.
We asked our patrons.
Yes, we did.
For questions.
I was just going to lead us into it of...
I'm just reminding everyone that if you go to Patreon, you can submit questions for these arc reviews, just so you're aware. Anyway, go on, sorry.
How dare you? I guess I kind of just wanted to start this off with talking about what sort of our general feelings about SKYPIEA and how that was handled. Because there's quite a few questions that were just like, did you expect to actually go into the sky? And
did you ever expect it?
I mean, I literally would have never thought of it until they brought it up. Like, I never would have thought, like, oh man, the Grand Line's getting boring. I hope we blast off to outer space. But then once they introduce it, and it just seems kind of crazy. And I think what's extra interesting about it is that it is done so early in the story. It's not like, okay, we've been on this journey for like 1,000,000 years and it's getting boring, so now we're gonna go to the sky. It seems like a very classic Oda thing of like, oh, I just had this idea and I'm just gonna do it. You know what I mean? Like the story didn't need, we already like just had our first big arc in the Grand Line, so we didn't need like, oh, now we're going to go to even
reset.
Another place because this is getting stale. It's like, this is just getting started, but now I'm going to shake it up completely because I want to go to the sky. Basically.
Or in a more like tightly written story, you might, the sky, like going to the sky, it's kind of like a tropey thing. Like I think of not that One Piece is like guilty of using of like that. I'm saying it's a bad thing at all. It's just that like it's one of those things where I did not expect. I even heard about SKYPIEA, like the word SKYPIEA. I didn't know it was in the sky, and I didn't know that it was like, I just, you hear there's like 1,000,000 names of arcs, and like, there's so many names of 1,000,000 crazy things. So I never expected to go to the sky. But I had heard the word SKYPIEA, and there's a moment in the reaction where I was like, oh my God, that makes so much sense. I can't believe I didn't think of this. And going to the sky in like a story about sailing and exploration and stuff like that, because it's been done before, you would like, I would think like, I think of like Castle in the Sky. I think of Legend of Zelda. Like there's 1,000,000 Zelda games that feature like some sort of civilization in the sky. And, it's a relatively common, and the idea of people residing in the heavens that are like, angels or some sort of human adjacent beings of some sort. It's not in a fantasy type story. It's not necessarily unheard of. So you'd think I'd expect it, but I didn't really expect it. And you're right. It's not the kind of thing that you would expect to. So there's two things. I wouldn't expect it to be this early as well, but that's only with the context of One Piece being as long as it is. And we also have learned through comments and stuff like that Oda's original plan for the story was a lot more small in scope, and that's the same with any manga. Like no mangaka or comic writer or anything. Like if you listen to American comic authors and manga artists all the time, everybody who's writing for a weekly or bi-weekly magazine release, they, the first couple arcs are usually like, oh, well, I hope I make another 2 months rent on this fucking contract or whatever. Like it's, the stories aren't usually written with at least manga or comics aren't usually written with the expectation of future employment. So, although this is early, quote unquote, in the series, it's relatively far into like, manga don't usually last as long as One Piece has. So it's it makes sense that at this point in the story, multiple crew members added, and slightly past the point where Oda was like had changed sort of there's comments that have said that he had the idea where the 7 warlords are going to be like the final bosses, and then they were going to get to the One Piece, and it was going to be relatively shorter. Alabasta was originally going to be like the end of the first original short-term draft, again because of that like employment thing that I was talking about. Yeah. So like it does make sense where it is as early as it is, because it's not actually that early. It's only early in the context of a greater amount of One Piece chapters. But you're right in that, like, I would expect this to be like, oh, we're finding the One Piece. Turns out it's not even in the ocean. It's in the sky. It's so crazy. All the huge reset, like huge, like, and the addition of like the mantras. There were a couple of questions about mantras and dials and stuff like that. Like we talked about that, the introduction of these other power systems or other sort of elements. That's the kind of thing that you would introduce like leading into the final confrontation, shit like that. So it's kind of weird where it is. I didn't expect it. But it's one of those things where it's perfect because I feel like I should have expected it, because it kind of it feels like it makes a lot of sense, that they would go to the sky. Don't you think?
Yeah, it is like this weird thing where it fits, but then it's also just I think you're right that part of it is the fact that we know that One Piece is so long. We're in the first quarter still, and it's still going. So it's just like not something that you would expect this radical change. But then in the end, not much actually did change. So yeah. it kind of looped back around to, he wasn't actually a god. He was just a guy with a devil fruit power that made him basically a god because he was so powerful and no one else had a devil fruit power.
But not literally a god in that, like, people...
In that a new power system was being created, essentially.
And I'm still... this is one of those things I would love to, like... This is the kind of thing you would... I would ask an author, like, if you were sitting down with them, talking one-on-one, no recordings or anything, like... Or maybe he would just answer, honestly, but, like... when you were developing the idea of them going up to meet God, was it really always going to be just he is just that powerful? Or was there, with the mantras, all that shit? It really felt like they were setting up for something else, but it could have just been subversion. It's really hard to tell. And at the beginning of the arc, when it started to shift from God to really powerful guy who thinks he's God, it was a very seamless transition. And it's like, I literally cannot tell if it was always meant to be how it turned out to be. I'm split 50-50. I actually can't tell. Because we talk about that kind of thing a lot, because it's very interesting, and because it makes perfect sense that there is no, he's not the real god. It's like he's a usurper. It's more about the kingdom, but it also felt like using all of those terms, like God, kami, all this shit, and people having to worship, and his eyes are everywhere, and all that kind of stuff. It worked in really well with his power, because he uses electricity, and there's like a ways that his mantra can extend out and he can hear everybody. But it felt like there was more sort of gravity to what they were setting up, like when they were initially entering SKYPIEA and those initial areas. But people have also pointed out in the comments that that sort of change from it being so obscure to being familiar is kind of what happens in every island, no matter where it is. To me, I expected it to be more different, more not different, more to have more of that gravity, more of that like real culture shock craziness in it, for it to be incredibly different for longer.
I don't know. I know what you mean though, and I do think, like, I know people probably don't just want to, hear too much, yapping and complaining about the same things, but I still do think that it might have been more might have been cooler, in my personal opinion, if no one in the Sky Islands had ever heard of a devil fruit, and that's why he was like believed him to truly be God because he had these powers that no one knew where they could have ever come from and what that could mean. Whereas then when we see them, it's like, oh, that's a devil fruit.
Yeah.
And we know because
we have that outside knowledge.
Yeah, exactly.
You know? Yeah.
And it could have been like, you know, you previously, like, you know, they had their own things. They had dials, they had mantras, they had all of these things that were, you know, sort of within their own ecosystem of the Sky Island and their own society and working in a certain way. And then this guy comes along and they don't know what it is. And that's what gives him that extra power above everyone else. Because as we see in the Grand Line, even if you're really powerful and have a devil fruit power, it's like you're like a king and not like a god.
Yeah.
You're above everyone and you're super powerful and you can kind of do whatever you want. But people know why it is that you can do that.
Right.
You know what I mean?
Yeah, no, I agree. Yeah. I think that that would have been like a really easy way to like kind of just here's the thing is it would have like it would have simplified a lot of like the backstory around how Eneru got to power and how powerful he was without losing any of the complexity of the Sky Island, because the only other like devil fruit thing there, as far as I'm aware, no, there were two. There was the one guy who like had the fire or whatever. Or no, what? Wait, did he was the dude who was riding the?
He had a fire like dial.
Right. Yeah, that's what it was. He didn't have a devil fruit power. Yeah. So the only one was Pierre, right?
Yes.
Unless I might be forgetting something else, but I don't think I am. So
I
like
think it was just Pierre.
But that makes me like it's funny because Pierre was introduced way before the idea of Eneru having a devil fruit was like not thought of. It again, it's like I don't know what was thought of first. I don't even know if talking about it in this way is really productive. It's just interesting for me to think about. Yeah, I don't know. Anyway, it doesn't matter. It's just I really like how it turned out. It's funny. I did not expect it to turn out in the way that it did. So I guess it's just interesting. I don't know.
Yeah, it's not necessarily a complaint. It's just interesting to think about, you know, alternate ways or the writing process and how things might have started out versus how they ended up. I don't know. It's just something that's kind of interesting to us. Maybe not to everyone, but you know. Okay, so here's a question that's kind of similar to this from Theo. We have now journeyed to a sea restaurant, a desert nation, and an island in the sky, etc. What's been your favorite place thematically, and what has been your favorite aesthetically so far? And what type of places would you like to see next?
What about you?
I did like the aesthetics of the Sky Island. I thought it was cool to have the piece of like Earth up in the sky. I think that's really interesting and not. I feel like it's kind of unique to not I've seen like a million things with like a sky world or whatever, but it's just kind of cool that it's like, okay, so they have these special type of clouds and they were already living there, and then this piece of like soil comes up and it's like treated like this crazy thing. I think that was really interesting. But I also have liked a lot of the other places. I liked Alabasta. I thought that was kind of cool, and you know. Everything with Crocodile being able to take over that place because of his abilities, because it was a desert, and you know all the stuff with the rain and everything. Like I really like that, and I think the theming of like the desert that hadn't had rain in so long, and then when the rain falls, that moment I feel like made that setting extra cool because it was the terrain and the world of that island. Allowed for that, like that moment, very similar to the bell though in SKYPIEA, of like this moment of like, oh, it's
moment of clarity, yeah, moment of resolution where it just kind of everything just kind of clears up.
Yeah,
you know?
But I also I really like the Elbaf Island back in the day. That was also really cool. Like
in hindsight, the Elbaf Island was it feels like it was, I don't know. Feels like it's in, I guess in the context of what we have now, it seems kind of underwhelming, and that's why when I think of like if you're those two things, aesthetically and thematically, based on those two criteria, I think that the only one, like the one that's head and shoulders above the rest, is SKYPIEA for sure. And well, if you include Jaya and that whole area, I think that it's like not even comparable. The only thing that's close is Alabasta because of the old architecture, the Egyptian style of everything. But even the main city in Alabasta looked like, once we were in the city, looked a little too reminiscent of like Logue Town. You know what I'm saying? Like the architecture and everything. It looked like, once we were in the actual city, it looked almost identical to other places that we had seen in the East Blue and other places. There's nothing really in SKYPIEA that look, other than if you include Jaya, that looks like anywhere else in the One Piece world so far. And I think that is fitting because it shows just an evolution of Oda's, his evolution as an artist and his standards as a creator, where he is always trying to evolve things, even if it's in a small way, even if it's not, even if he's retreading similar ground, he always is trying to change his approach, change the product so that it's not just a copy paste of the previous thing. And you, especially like if you think about, as far as that goes, about like Oda changing his approach. So my answer to the question is, aesthetically and thematically, I think that SKYPIEA is head and shoulders above the rest of One Piece right now. Is it the best arc? No, it's not. I'd say I liked Alabasta overall more than SKYPIEA, but there are elements in SKYPIEA that are my like favorite parts, like the flashback and stuff like that, and Robin exploring the city and everything. I thought it was really cool. It really felt like a mysterious like exploration. So aesthetically and thematically, I think SKYPIEA is the best, but it's not the best arc. But what was I even saying? I forget what I was talking about. Going back to what we were saying at the start of the arc, like I feel like at the beginning of the arc, when we enter, like around the ball ordeal, it's so funny because there's a couple things. The ball ordeal, up until that point, we had talked multiple times in like almost every discussion how it was like, okay, so this is pretty much Alabasta. It's like we get here to this new place and okay, new arc. And then we meet like a girl who is, her home has been taken over by evil devil fruit dictator pirate guy, who wants to like, use the land for his own gain. So it's like we went to this new place, and then everything that we learn, it's like it's becoming more and more the same. And instead of dance powder, we have dials, or but it's not used the same. Obviously, the dance powder is a completely different narrative device. But like the introductions and the movement and everything that was happening, it was like beat for beat we're learning things. And then we met Wyper, and he's kind of like what's his name from Alabasta? I'm forgetting his name. Koza, yes. And then we get to the ball ordeal, and the ball ordeal felt like the switch up that happened that has happened in multiple times in previous arcs. That like that moment of Oda is like going week to week, planning out the arc. What does he want to say? Feeling things out. Okay, let's check this room. Okay, there's some in there that I kind of like. All right, let's go down the hallway. Okay, this room of my story. Okay, I see a little thing there that might be interesting, but it's like not retreading the same ground. But he has these things like in Chopper's arc, when everybody was going around and like everybody was going around, everybody was shuffling around in this town and that town, and he's 2 towns over, that town over, and it's just like, okay, what are we doing here? Like, what's the point? And then then it's like Luffy is like climbing the fucking thing, and it's like the arc just from that point on just kind of like it just goes forward, and it finds sort of its path. Same thing happened in Alabasta when Luffy punched Vivi. There's this moment where they're like, okay, we're going over here, and we're going over here, we're crossing the desert here, and then at some point it's just like, all right, we know what's going on, like where do we go from here? And then Oda, I think around that point, is like, now we put the real arc into action. We've set everything up. I've explored everything that I want to explore with like the location and the characters. Now we get into the plot of the arc of the actual thing that's been set up. Same thing happened around the time of the ball ordeal, it seems like to me, because the ball ordeal happens slightly after that when they all wake up and they all split up. And then there's Eneru comes up with like it's a longer period, like there's multiple things that are happening, but Eneru says he's having a battle royale and there's going to be 5 people left or whatever. He comes up with these like weird rules about it. There's a moment there too where it goes from where we were constantly comparing it to Alabasta. I even noticed that we stopped doing it.
Yeah.
But like as silly as like the battle royale weird thing, you know, like prophecy that he just comes up with,
just makes up a random statement.
yeah, well, that again, it makes sense with the idea that he's God, or that there's
Yeah.
maybe something more to the mantle of being God, or you know what I mean, like he's Oda's playing with these sort of motifs of godhood, of this higher plane of existence, this mantle that you take up where people worship you and you are in control of everybody and you have a domain. It's like being a god is different than being a king. And if you're playing with that kind of idea, it makes sense that you'd have this prophecy. And then it does kind of come true. Not really, but it shows that he's a false god. Like, it does play into the whole kind of thing with the arc. Mm-hmm. But it's around that period where he comes up with that and the ball ordeal and all that shit where, yeah, we stopped comparing it to Alabasta. And I think that's like, just noticing, I think, because we talk about we talk a lot about our expectations as new viewers, as people who like don't think about everything, and we up to this point we've constantly been like kind of hedging in a weird way, where we're just kind of like, you know, as new viewers, we're really liking this, but like a lot of the real deep cut enjoyment comes from people who are way more invested than us. But like, so we see things in a fresh way, I think. Mm-hmm. And I guess, what am I saying? I guess with all of that kind of shit that we always talk about, I think just acknowledging the fact that we stopped making those direct comparisons to the previous arc at some point, I think says a lot. I think that
Yeah.
like, because we always notice when it is the certain way, but it's difficult to notice when we stop comparing it to the previous arc and
like,
stop
oh,
making
wow,
all these
this
connections.
is so different. You're not going to say that every single episode.
Yeah.
But you are going to notice certain patterns, like we have been for the entire time of One Piece, of how leading up to the Arlong arc, a lot of those smaller arcs were very similar and then like kind of polished up and revamped for Arlong Park.
And then a lot of the islands were sort of like an evolution of Arlong Park, like in some way, like whether it's Chopper is taking Nami's place, or Vivi is taking Nami's place, or Conus is taking Nami's place, whatever, or there's others too. It doesn't, like, it was always this kind of pattern, but then with Skypiea, and it's really like it kind of is after Alabasta, because we said the same thing about Robin. I think there was a question about that too, about like breaking the patterns, or you know, with the way that Robin was introduced. And I'm still the jury's still out for me personally whether I like the way that Robin has been introduced, because so far it just seems like a bit too abrupt, that she just became a part of the crew and now it's just like there's no reservations, no discussion about it, you know. So like the jury's still out. I'm gonna need to learn more about Robin. We still haven't gotten her backstory, and that'll kind of color a lot of it. But it's just like, if you think about that, about Robin's introduction, Robin's becoming part of the crew, and then that shift moment where in Skypiea, where it becomes not another Alabasta, Arlong Park, Drum Kingdom, etc. Elements here and there, right? Like it's still, they're still fighting the evil devil fruit guy, but like, you know, it the fact that we stopped making this, I think it's just worth pointing out, because you know, and I think that plays into why I think I liked Skypiea so much, despite its immense flaws. Like, just like, I'm willing to overlook a lot of its terrible pacing and weird choices, because I think that Oda was really trying to do something different and push the story forward and push everything forward. Like, there was a lot of lore dumps. There was a lot of strong thematic characters. If you think of Cricket and Wyper, as he was developed, was very interesting. There's a lot that's wrong with Skypiea, but I think that there's elements about it that are some of the best that One Piece has had so far. It's just, it as an arc, I think falls short of Alabasta in terms of like emotional investment for me, and it's probably because I think the biggest thing is Vivi, because we had Vivi for so long, and Vivi was kind of clunky as well with her introduction. But you know, I think as it paid off, I think that I got more emotional payoff from Alabasta than I did overall, for considering the entire package, than Skypiea. But Skypiea, there are parts of it that are clearly like the most artistically
experimental. Like,
yeah, in the context of One Piece, experimental. Yeah, and I really appreciate that. I think it's worth appreciating.
yeah, we've kind of already covered some of this question, but I think it's really good, so I'm gonna talk about it anyway, and then say a few more things. So this is from Extra Crispy, and they say, you've talked a lot about breaking the pattern of the show since as Robin joined the crew instead of Vivi, and I would say going to Skypiea did that even more effectively. My question is, where do you think the story is going next in terms of geography and just the story in general? Do you think we're heading towards a more adventurous new world and like Skypiea, or a return to form with something like Alabasta in a more grounded battle against a large enemy organization with political implications? Or do you think we're going to see some new kind of adventure completely different from what we've gotten so far in the show? I'd like to know what you think next, and also what you prefer to see from One Piece in the coming arc. Anything from world building to character moments or tone, or even some characters you think / hope will make a return soon. I think there really is, and I didn't really think about it too much until we're talking about it right now, with how much Skypiea did kind of try and shake things up, and like you were saying, some things were not quite as effective, but based on the way that we've seen the writing style of One Piece kind of evolve, I feel like it makes me more excited. I feel like this is kind of laying the first foundation for taking more opportunities to shake things up in the future, you know? Like, I feel like he was trying certain things out, because yeah, you're right, he had this formula, and then it's like, okay, I'm going to try out a bunch of new different things at once, and it makes it feel very fresh, a little bit clunky in some places, but I think Robin's addition to the crew and having the Poneglyphs and something else instead of like, oh, we're following the log pose and gonna find the One Piece, because she's a little bit more knowledgeable about history, I feel like that kind of unlocks a little bit more into the world and the lore, and finding specific things that can like give us more information along the way and make it feel natural, because someone like Luffy, I mean, like, he can think that it's kind of cool, but he's not actively seeking out the political history of a place, or you know what I mean? It's he just takes things as they come to him and how he feels about them and by the people that he meets. So I think having someone like Robin, who is very invested in the history, I feel like offers off a lot of opportunities and leads into more, like, yeah, there could be more political stuff. There also could be even more interesting stuff of just finding a deserted island that had a poneglyph or something on it, you know? Like, I feel like there's so many options, and I really don't know what he's gonna do next. If he's gonna do, like, a rendition of Skypiea 2.0, where we are gonna go somewhere totally new, or if we're gonna go somewhere more familiar, but take some of the what would be the word, like the plot progression elements of Skypiea, but put it into something more like Alabasta. Does that make sense? Sorry, I feel like I'm just kind of spinning in a circle here. I think that it could be interesting to see something more familiar. Like, we don't have to blast off to a whole totally new world. But just keep the ability to keep things new and fresh. And now also that we have dials, I feel like that's kind of cool, because as we saw in the G, even though that was a filler arc, them using dials and Nami having the waiver was like so fun, and I feel like really enhanced the story. So I would be excited to see that play out in a new arc. You know, if they get confronted by someone and they can, you know, pull out a dial or fly off on a waiver, or do something else. I feel like I don't know. I just feel like it's a little bit livelier with some of these new things that have been added in.
Yeah, I think that going for yet another thing like Skypiea right after Skypiea would be a mistake. I think that it would, and I don't see any merit in the story currently for yet another, just like getting immersed in a local political system. I think that with what we ended off Jaya with learning about Whitebeard, Blackbeard, seeing Shanks again, hearing about all the government stuff, all the stuff with the warlords and Blackbeard trying to be a warlord or something, all that shit, I feel like that needs to take a step forward in this next arc in some way, whether it's at the end in the conclusion leading up to next arc. But I feel like I would be a little bit fatigued doing another what we just did. You know,
I think I wouldn't even mind like a couple of smaller island arcs.
Yeah, I wouldn't mind
with
that.
building the world at large, like if we know Blackbeard's coming after them or something, meanwhile they're just like going along, or we're, you know, seeing Whitebeard, or you know what I mean, like if these things like they kind of were building in the background and like building up in Jaya, and we're like, oh wow, we're learning so much, and then we just like, we're going to Skypiea, boys. We don't care about any of that shit. So now that we come back, I feel like I would like that, but I don't think we need to get involved in something that's like super strict, or necessarily like, you know, Alabasta, where it's like, okay, we're going to this place and we're going to spend a long time here. I wouldn't mind if we kind of went from island to island for a bit, kind of like earlier on when we first entered the Grand Line, but this time with the knowledge of these other like big players that are kind of coming in and in the background and doing their own things.
Yeah, because I think that, well, I think part of what I mean by like getting fatigued with another one of these, I think it would have to, like, I think we need an arc that's more focused on the crew being the crew and not, because that was the big thing with Skypiea, was the crew weren't the main characters of the arc. It's probably the main reason why it felt so clunky up until the flashback, because I mentioned this, it's like, if the main characters, you know, they aren't going to, like, okay, you got to think about it like this. Like, Luffy is not going to steal the precious ancestral gifts of a subjugated people. Luffy's not going to show up to these people who have been enslaved, beaten down, screwed up for years, for hundreds of years, and are the victims of colonialism, essentially. Like, Luffy's not going to show up to them and be like, oh, you have my gold, and steal their fucking gold, like, cold-heartedly. That's why they didn't just take the gold. They, like, took it from inside the snake. They snuck around, like, it was more of a joke. Like, Luffy's not going to be a fucking, like, asshole like that. That's not, like, he will do things that are questionable and just for fun, but so he's not going to be like that. So, like, Luffy showing up to this place, wanting the gold, then finding out who he would be taking the gold from, I never thought that like they would actually be at odds with the Shandians. That's not the point. The Shandians are like more the main characters, or Conan. Like, they are a third party in this very insulated situation that is not connected. Because with Vivi was connected to a bunch of outside things where we had kind of an in to that, and we were friends with Vivi, so we had kind of an inward context where we had, like, we were at some point within the framework of Alabasta and all the things that were going on with them. With Conus and Wyper, it's like we're so from the outside, you have to really make us quickly involved with them. But even if you do, the real story is about Cricket and Wyper and about Noland and Calgara. That's the real story of Skypiea and Gonfall and Eneru and stuff like that. Our guys are just kind of along for the ride. And because we don't have a thing like we need to help our friend Vivi save her people. It's more about, you know, they were there to help at the end of the day, but it's like they were going there for more superficial reasons. So if you want us to get involved as audience members and like kind of quasi crew members, if you think about it, in this conflict, then you have to make us care, but there's no way for us to put ourselves in the shoes of all these characters that we have no context to care for, because we as audience members are a crew member. So like if the crew is disconnected from this conflict, and we need to be but the audience needs to be invested in that conflict in order for the story to really happen, but the crew has no reason to be involved other than we want gold, that is inevitably going to cause issues of investment, of like how do we like make our interests collide with another interest and then cause a nexus, a conflict. What was I saying with all that? So that's what I mean by if I don't want another Skypiea right now. I don't want another exploration thing where we get involved in another conflict. I want Robin's backstory. I want let's talk about what Robin has done and what that means for being a part of our group. You know, like it doesn't have to be so serious. I don't think it'll get so serious at this point. She's been a part of the crew so long. I don't think that they'll like, oh, but do we really want Robin in our crew? At this point, she's pretty much a part of the crew, which I think is a missed opportunity, but also it's different and unique to One Piece. So I'm okay with them not doing the whole like, oh, what do we trust this person? I'm okay with them kind of skipping over that and just Robin's just a friend now. But I want some kind of real development. Yeah, well, yeah, I don't want melodrama, but I want something. I want like some kind of test, some kind of like, what are we doing here? You know, like what, like, okay, not because we're going for the One Piece, but like, and we're having fun, but, and I don't know what will cause that, you know? I don't know what catalyst will cause some of the crew members or all of the crew members to really question what they're doing or question each other. Well, that's why I'm going to Robin, because I think that Robin's the easiest thing where if we are going into Robin's backstory, that's a really easy way to like kind of shake up the crew dynamic. We just spent all this time where the crew was very much secondary.
Yes.
And there was a couple questions that asked like, well, who had the best character development? I don't think, did anyone have any character development? Like, I think we had a similar question in Alabasta where it's like, what do you think of Luffy's character development? I don't think Luffy had any character development. He got fucked up by Crocodile, but that's not character development. He didn't become afraid of hooks, you know, from that point forward. And now Luffy's afraid of hooks.
Or he was like super naive and now he knows and
he had like a dark moment where he's like really, you know, I think there's potential for that at some point later, but Luffy in general is going to be Luffy forever. I don't see Luffy changing that much, and that's okay. It's a different kind of character, and that's what a lot of the comments said on the previous discussion, where they're like, that's not the point of One Piece. So it's not the point of One Piece to have like hardcore character drama where we like, oh my god, is this really worth it? Blah blah blah. Maybe a little bit, but that's why I went to Robin and wanting her backstory and like, do we really trust Robin? Because that's just like the first thing that my mind thinks of what can we do for crew character development to really like solidify this new kind of situation and just have an arc where we're focused on ourselves rather than all this other bullshit. Yeah.
And I think Robin is the obvious choice also because when we were meeting some of the other characters like Chopper and Usopp and Nami, they were the main focus of that arc. Like we got to know them during their own arc. Whereas for Robin, she was kind of a side character in Alabasta. She was like an enigma. We were like, what is she doing? She's like sabotaging Crocodile, but also like his second in command. Like she was very interesting. And then she just joins our crew and we're like, okay, that's chill. But, and I think you're right. Like I don't have a problem with them, you know, just accepting her. That's totally fine. That's like very in the vibe. But I do think it could be interesting, especially if we're going to be broadening up our knowledge of pirates and like Whitebeard and Blackbeard and whoever and whatever and all these different Marines and the warlords and stuff. If she possibly is connected or knows more information about all of that, then I think that could be a good way of like, okay, well, if you like a good way to kind of get into her backstory a little bit, or if we come across someone from her past and then, you know, things have to be reconciled that way. I don't need them to be like, oh, we don't trust you. Because the same thing with when Nami betrayed them, it wasn't like Luffy never believed like, oh, Nami's betraying me.
Yeah.
But you know, just a little bit of something, and yeah, focus it more on the crew. And I think that's part of why I really like the filler arc, because it was just so focused on the crew, and all the other characters that were introduced from those Marines were like fun and exciting and you know, very lively, and it didn't have to be this huge thing because it was just such a small filler arc.
Yeah.
It just felt very self-contained, and like the characters could just have fun, have their little moments, have like Sanji, you know, being like, I'm going to use all the scraps of this, and
Robin impersonating the shepherd.
Yeah, and it was just, it was fun, and I feel like that's part of why the filler was so good, is because it was after Skypiea, where the crew was like kind of doing their own thing and like helping, but also kind of dancing around. And there was
also we got the crew was half asleep.
Well, I was just going to bring up this question, which is part of that and kind of leads into that. Tyler Davis said, at this point in the story, do you believe that Luffy is a little too overpowered? I remember when reading this week to week, my friends and I would discuss this because some of them thought the story was getting stale because Luffy didn't have too much of a challenge up till this point, like other anime or other manga protagonists may have had. I wanted to see how a first-time watcher felt about that. And I think that is part of the, not necessarily the problem, but part of a challenge that One Piece continually faces, is having this protagonist that is so strong and so cool and so wacky and can like pull out a crazy plan and do something crazy, and it's so fun when it happens. But because he's on that level and can do that, even against someone like Eneru, who was like a god,
built up to be super
Luffy
duper powerful,
had resistance against him essentially. So in that situation, what can you do but make him fall down a beanstalk 20,000 times, or get trapped inside a snake for 50 episodes?
There's two things you can do. You can either give him character development and force him to like question himself and question his reality, or you can remove him. That's it. That's all you can really do. But the thing with One Piece is that Luffy isn't just the strongest guy that, you know, I mean, he's going to beat everybody. Like, you know, Luffy's going to win in the end. Let's be real. But like, Luffy is going to win in the end because Luffy is the answer to all of the problems. Luffy is the heart and human spirit. He is the explorer's spirit, the person who wants to experience life. That's Luffy. So like, Luffy being the ultimate powerhouse badass, the point is that he is the heart. He, like, everyone has questions and you know, it's a classic shonen thing. It's like everybody has, you know, a twisted morality or a childhood trauma that they're like that is informing their decisions, or some kind of misguided idealism or something, and it's all wrapped up and it's all kind of messed up in a way. And it's very complicated. And then you have Luffy who comes in and beats them because he is, not just because he's the main character, but the reason he beats them is because he represents like the right way. And it's not the perfect way always, but it's like Luffy wants to live. He wants to enjoy life.
Himself, and
he's true to himself.
And he cares about people, and you know, gets fired up about someone else's thing, you know?
So that's why he's overpowered. It's because it's not about him, you know, it's a different thing. It's like I think that's why maybe a lot of people, or why some people, not a lot, some people, I think that's like the difference between, like that's probably the core difference between Naruto and One Piece. And if you think about it, it's that Naruto goes through depression. He goes through, like, there's one point where he actually literally is having a cardiac episode. Like he's having a heart attack. Oh, my hair's all fucked up. He's having a literal heart, like he's convulsing and hyperventilating when he has to face like a really difficult decision at one point. I don't know. Maybe Luffy will like. I mean, I'm sure he'll have his own hardships. I'm sure there's a lot ahead of us. And people say that the story changes a lot. But like Luffy is Luffy. He will win because he has the right way of thinking. It's the same reason why like the whole thing with Bellamy is like a perfect sort of microcosm of that, where Bellamy is like this jaded, narcissistic sort of. You know, there's no like stop dreaming, all this shit, and tries to like beat him into submission. But Luffy beats him not just because they have similar powers, but it's like, why do they have similar powers? Why did Oda make him a spring man where Luffy's a rubber man? And why did he make them with opposing ideals fight? You know, what's the like writing behind the reason is because it's showing somebody who is not equal, because like Bellamy's not supposed to be as strong, but like somebody who is sort of a reflection of Luffy, who has lost all hope, who is just kind of drinking his life away, has given up on any dreams. He's the enemy of dreams. And he has a very similar, like the way that he fights is similar in some ways to Luffy. The reason is because they have clashing ideals. So then when Luffy comes out on top, despite them being very similar in some ways, it shows that Luffy's idea is correct, and Luffy's way of living is the right way forward. So like that's what One Piece is about. I forget why I'm talking about this, but I'm sure there's a reason.
It was because we were talking about why he's so overpowered.
Oh yeah, that's why he's overpowered.
Yeah, and I agree with that. It's not just that he's super strong, but part of like the whole like he's literally made of rubber is like rubber bounces back and is adaptable. So that like that's what gives him his powers. Not that just that he's physically stronger. In fact, he gets his ass kicked fairly regularly, at least the first time around, or eventually in the fight. But what allows him to win is because he can come back from that, and keep pushing forward, and that's part of it. But to like circle back around to what we were kind of talking about before, it does get hard, I think, because we have such a huge cast. So first of all, the main character is super overpowered in various ways. But also, a lot of the other characters, like Zoro is super powerful. Sanji is really powerful. Chopper can sometimes be powerful. Robin, in a certain situation, can be, like, crazy powerful.
Although I saw a comment about that, but go on.
Okay. Well, it's just interesting to have such a strong cast so early on in your story because, there's only so powerful you can make the villain. Like, we fought someone that was basically on the level of a literal god. Yeah. And, defeated them. So...
But again, it's a similar thing with Bellamy that I was talking about. Sorry.
So, I guess what I'm just getting at is like the whole knocking people unconscious or trapping them somewhere. I feel like sometimes it does get a little bit stale but it's almost impossible not to do unless you get super creative with what the other people are doing and what is preventing them from being like, if they can either fight someone else that no one cares about and it's just a lame fight, they can get trapped under a rock or inside a snake, they can get struck by lightning and go unconscious, they can just get lost in the woods, but especially I think in Skypiea, because we had so many groups of people, like we had Eneru, we had Conus and her dad, we had a Wyper and all of them, and we had Aisa over there. Like there were so many groups of people and all the whatever those goat sheep guys that were going around. Like there's so many people that are already big cast that already needs some people to take a step back. Normally, so then they need to add, they need to make even more of them knocked out half the time because there's so many additional characters that you don't have time within the story without making it 1,000 years long to be making all of them doing something important at every single time instead of just being like, oh, they're back there.
They're dead. Yeah. Like Sanji and Usopp are literally fried instantly and then just sit around like unconscious for the rest of it. But that's like, so similarly, again, going back to him being overpowered. Yeah. It's the same thing that I said with Bellamy versus Eneru. Is the exact same shit. And that's how Shonen works. And that's how every arc I imagine will probably work unless Luffy like fucking takes a serious L at some point, but eventually he'll come back and he will still be, he'll bounce back even harder, which is the point of being a rubber man. But with Eneru, yeah, it makes sense that Luffy is overpowered against Eneru and that he can go in this like super condensed ball of fucking crazy lightning energy and just like swing a golden ball around and then disperse it. It's like, does that make sense? Literally? No, it makes no fucking sense at all. You can throw as many random scientific theories or a bunch of random shit that some Redditor commented 10 years ago and that everybody has kind of evolved that to be their kind of headcanon as to why that makes sense. But I don't care about that. What matters is what Oda cares about clearly is that Luffy is the thematic answer to the tyranny of Eneru. That's it. That's all that matters in that. And that's all that matters in most cases. But yeah, so that's why. So Luffy needs to be overpowered. He needs to be overpowered because because like, and I think this is why I think I didn't really care when he got stabbed by Crocodile and got like killed. I think that's why I didn't really care. It's because like when the villain, so when the hero, I've been talking about, when the hero beats a villain, it's them triumphing in like a debate. It's them, their ideals are beating the ideals of the villain. So then the right way to move forward in life is winning over the tyranny, over the evil of this opposing force, of this person that wants to tear down good or what have you. Maybe it's a more complex way of saying that, but that's generally how it works. That's why the hero beats the villain. That's why Luffy is always overpowered. It's because his ideals are overpowered. And that is represented with him being a really powerful fighter. But when Luffy got stabbed by Crocodile wasn't like beating him in an argument. He wasn't like, oh, Luffy, you thought this, you thought that. Well, you're wrong, and that is represented in you getting fucked up here and you getting bodied by me because my ideals beat yours in an argument. So like I'm beating you right now because you didn't have an answer for the questions that I posed. Crocodile was just evil. That's all he was. Like if he was arguing with Vivi or arguing with another person who had like a different idea of how to govern people, if that's what the arc was really about, but the fight of Crocodile was about military might and domination versus people having water and living peacefully. So like when the guy who's all about world domination and military might beats the guy who likes to eat food and drink water and explore and wants to be king of the pirates, it's not a... And then conversely when Luffy beats him, what's the dialogue there? You know what I mean? Like it's a good versus evil, but like what is that's why I wasn't super impacted by Crocodile beating Luffy. Also just because Luffy is, he's not going to lose there eventually. But so that's why I think Eneru to me was a lot more compelling, not because he was actually like his arguments were more compelling or anything, but because like, even though Luffy had to be separated for so long, that was really annoying. The fact that Luffy was the answer, Luffy's way of thinking, his way of being was the answer to Eneru. It wasn't like super deep necessarily because again, the Straw Hats were super separated from the conflict of the land. But like that idea of Luffy being so strong that nobody else can even come close to this level of power, and Luffy goes through it. There's something there, like on a deeper sort of psychological level, if you kind of examine that. At least that's what I think. I don't know. So that's kind of what I think. I guess what I'm saying there is Luffy's overpowered for a reason, and I think that that reason was well represented in SKYPIEA versus Luffy's fight with Crocodile and Alabasta. I guess is the main point of what I just said. Does that make sense?
Yeah. I do.
I do wish there was another way to do it without separating him. That's my thing. I wish that there was one way to do it.
I wish that there was a way to do that, and maybe eventually Oda will figure that out. But I like even when I rack my brain, I can't think of a way to do it that isn't just kind of silly. No matter what the excuse is, no matter what he's doing, it's always going to feel frustrating when okay, if he could just get there, then we could get a move on. And it's like you're stalling. Sometimes it's not as bad when other things are going on that are just more relevant. But when you're like, oh my God, if he could just get out of this fucking snake, or if they could just get up that beanstalk once and for all.
I mean, here maybe the answer will be that Luffy isn't the answer. Like maybe that'll be that would be interesting. What if Luffy, his way of thinking doesn't work, and his powers then don't work in a fight against a villain? And because I was thinking like this problem is the same as in Dragon Ball as well. Pretty much most of Dragon Ball, Goku is impervious. He can do anything. He's the most powerful of all time. And like for a long time it was, okay, we just need to hold them off. We'll all probably die just until Goku gets here. If Goku can get here, he's been doing training with King Kai. He's been doing this and that. He's gotten the magic beans that heal him. He can, we can survive this as long as we could just make it so that Goku can get here before they destroy everything. And then the Cell Saga comes around, and Goku is not the answer to the problem. Like, Goku is not powerful enough to do it, and that's like a what the fuck? And a different character comes forward, and then they do it, and that has its own sort of message to it with how that all turns out. I feel weird like talking about specifics. I've probably talked about it before a million times, but anyway, so maybe that's the way forward, is like, rather than Luffy always being the guy to beat the main big villain, that would be cool. What if Luffy isn't the one and Zoro needs to step forward, or even fucking, maybe Robin or probably Zoro, but I mean, maybe all of them together. And not just to like all of them come together to prop up Luffy so that he can get the last, he's standing on all their shoulders type thing. But maybe Luffy just can't do it, That would be a pretty interesting.
Or like he instead of them like weakening up the bad guy first and then he comes in, or like dealing with all like the grunts and stuff, like what if Luffy kind of starts the fight but then they have to finish it, like he gets taken out, but it's not like, okay, we're taking him out so that we can bring him back later and elongate this. It's like, okay, we're taking him out because he's out, and someone else has to step up, or everyone has to work together. I think that could be interesting. I also think the addition of Blackbeard can be interesting, because as we know, Luffy and Blackbeard share very similar mentality.
Two sides of the same coin, yeah.
Obviously, Blackbeard is a little bit more evil.
Well, we don't actually know that. That's been our theory based on our experience with shonen and our experience with storytelling, is that his archetype is like the shadow, and the fact that he is called Blackbeard, Well, it's also like when him and Luffy had that conversation, and it was like, but we haven't seen him do anything.
No.
We just know what he wants. We know, or kind of what he wants. He's like, if you say you've never seen a shonen before and you're watching it the first time, that person who has never seen anything doesn't know shit all. It's just that we're kind of interpreting it based on our knowledge. So we don't know about what Blackbeard is about, but yeah, based on that conversation, you're right.
It's just leading to, I don't know, because all the villains have been like very confident, but Blackbeard is more of like this free spirit. It's like him and Luffy are both seemingly kind of likened to Gold Roger in different ways. Obviously Blackbeard is going around like destroying places, and Luffy is going around saving places. But I just would be interested to see him go up against, because so far we've seen Luffy, who has this very like kind of relaxed, and like he's very confident in himself and what he wants, but he's not so strict. He's not like, oh, I'm gonna go, this is exactly step by step how I'm gonna go find the One Piece, and I'm gonna raise up this army so that I can go and do this and that. It's not structured like that. It's like, I have a dream and I'm chasing it. And like that's my story. I'm just going with the flow in the direction that I want. And Blackbeard so far seems to be, from what we can see of him, it seems to be a similar thing. He just enjoys doing different things along the way. But I'd be interested to see, instead of like with Eneru, it's like this guy who's super selfish and I'm a god, and then Luffy's like, fuck you. I'd just be interested to see someone who really also encapsulates the essence of being a pirate, because as we know, obviously the Straw Hats and like Shanks' crew and possibly like Whitebeard as well, it's like they are kind of a different kind of pirates. It's like they're still pirates, but they're not what you would think of, whereas Blackbeard is more of what you would think of as a pirate, this like crazy guy flying around the seas, stealing stuff, burning down people's towns, but still with that like adventurous aspect.
That Blackbeard seems like he's going to represent like the logical conclusion of what pirates are in real life, and it makes sense that he is Blackbeard, like the legendary real life pirate. So like yeah, it is a life of freedom. It's a life, devoid of responsibilities and expectations, and you do what you want when you want. But people without any kind of, sometimes that means you got to do fucked up things, and sometimes when people who can do whatever they want, sometimes what they want is not the best, and that's sort of it's kind of a Hunter x Hunter type thing of like, when you give people the authority or the ability to do anything, not everyone's going to do great stuff. Some people are going to do fucked up things, but maybe the lesson will be like, even with people like Blackbeard in the world, it's better to let people be free than to force them to do what you want. That's like, there's the pirates and there's the Marines, and the Marines want you to do their thing. You do what they want. You fall in line. You follow their rules, or you're dead. But then there's the pirate side of it, and yeah, some people are like Shanks. Some people are like Luffy. Some people are gonna be like fucking Blackbeard, who like raid a town for no reason and just fuck them up, and that's kind of similar. Yeah, but I am excited to see, because he seems like he's got a crew full of like just hitters, so that's gonna be cool.
And like a small crew, and it seems like that they all care about each other. We saw that other guy that's on his crew like going and talking and like petitioning him to be a warlord or whatever.
Lafayette or Lafitte.
Yeah. So we know, and like it didn't seem like he got asked to do that as well. So it's like I don't know. There's lots of different things, and I kind of hope that we get more of that. I'm okay if it doesn't like come to a head right away, because I remember when we immediately met Blackbeard in Jaya, and then we were like, oh my god, this seems like so soon that this is happening. But then we just took a break with Skypiea anyway, So it was like, oh wow, things are really heating up, and then it kind of cooled down. So I'm like, okay, now if it kind of heats up again, it can go a little bit slower maybe, or fast again. I don't know. Maybe we'll come back down. Maybe Blackbeard will jump us as soon as we landed back in the water.
That's what I'm thinking. He might literally be waiting for us to get back, but I was thinking, so either he's gonna be waiting, we might run into him right away, we might run into him later. I was thinking it might have been cool if like Skypiea was a break, like what if we had been up there for a long time, but we hadn't. It's been like a day. Yeah. How long has it been?
Not long.
Not very long, like a couple days. No, because they slept.
Yeah.
But like I thought it would have been cool if they spent like a long time up there and then we come back down. Maybe there's a time no, there's not, because it's been 400 years, so it's same up and down. I thought it would have been cool if we spent a long time and like things had kind of developed with the whole, and maybe they will. Maybe that'll be what the next arc is adding some extra time so that the stuff with Whitebeard, Shanks, Blackbeard, everybody like kind of develops, and then we get introduced to it. And despite what we saw in 151 or 150 or whatever it was, 152, I think it was 151, maybe more stuff will have happened since then, more developments in that area. That would be pretty cool.
There's another question here from Robert. How do you think the live action will handle Skypiea and Oda's tendency not to kill characters? Wasn't sure how the arc can maintain its identity as having a survival game or an all-fearing god without having characters die. But I can't imagine every non-Straw Hat character who participated ended up dying at the end either. There'd be too few characters left at the end. Then it's a question of how do you choose who dies and who survives, and how do they survive if, say, some got shocked and died, but others survive? I think that this is a really interesting question, because as we saw based on the first season of the live action, they're a little bit more ruthless. They're trying to make it still fun and like mostly family friendly.
But they aren't doing that fake death bullshit.
But they aren't. They are. They're killing people off. But not killing they're not just making it like, oh, we want to be the new Game of Thrones where we kill off every single character.
Just where it makes sense.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So I think like it was clear in Alabasta. It's like obviously Pell is dead in the live action. Like I would guarantee that.
100%.
But I think it does get a little bit more messy in Skypiea because of this whole only 5 people are going to die, except everyone's going to be alive. They're going to be unconscious. But
and then at the end, everyone's alive.
Other than but then
some of the
they
goat
kind
people?
of allude that Sautery was dead. You know what I mean? Like, it's like, I don't know. I feel like it's going to be a balance of, okay, not everyone needs to die, but some people kind of need to die in order for it to be taken seriously, or at least have a little bit more of a, like, they went off to war and then every single person came back perfectly fine.
I think for me, I could see Alabasta being really fucking awesome in live action. I don't think I'm interested even in seeing SKYPIEA in live action. I don't see what fun there could be. They're gonna be on that Disney fucking screen, like every scene is gonna be in front of that Disney screen where it's all like the LEDs behind them and it looks like the real environment and the green screen. Like, it's just gonna be animated. It's just gonna be really high quality animation, like a Marvel movie, you know? And that's not interesting to me. I mean, it is kind of interesting to see how they'll change the story, but it's not going to be recognizable. Like, because they'll, like, here's the thing, the live action I see as kind of a the script writer's answer to all of the quirkiness in One Piece, you know? Like, if you were going to streamline the series in like a really easily digestible way, some ways I think that format might be better, but if you're talking about like the spirit of One Piece, it is lost, a lot of it. Like the One Piece we're watching now in the anime feels like a completely different fucking thing. I can see why a lot of diehard people are not a super big fan of the live action generally, or don't take it that seriously at the very least. I still really love the live action. I actually love it. And I can't wait to see more of it. But like, because if you're going with the script writers sharpening it and sort of like all these things that we talk about of like, oh, it would have made more sense if it was like this, or like, why did they even do that when they could have just like taken the shorter path between these two plot points or these two ideas or connected them in this way, and that, like, that's the kind of changes that they will probably make, and I'm excited to see them. But like, there's so many things that would need to be changed in SKYPIEA to where it will be unrecognizable and probably good, but the whole death game aspect, maybe mantras would have to be changed. The whole introduction of Eneru and that whole weird confusion probably about about the idea of God and what that means. That the whole terminology of that will have to be changed, probably to just kami, maybe. I don't know, like shit like that. I don't know how they'll change it, but I know that like there's too many changes to the point where like, what the fuck is the ball ordeal gonna be? What is the sacrificial altar? What about all the giant like sky sharks? What about like, and I'm not even at all talking like there's so many people that work in the visual effects industry. I think people overestimate how difficult it is for a production to do that. If they have enough funding, you can pay the visual effects artists to do their job. It's not like this arcane thing that like is only reserved for the crazy projects. Whether it'll look good or bad will depend on how much time and money they put into the visual effects. But people, like, having now seen SKYPIEA and seeing a taste of what everyone is saying, oh, it'll be unadaptable. That's not true. It just will have to be more visual effects, which, whatever. I don't care.
I think the real problem is not necessarily the setting. It's just the content.
It's the content.
And
it's how the plot moves.
Because, and it's interesting because like I have complete and utter faith based off of the first season of live action that Alabasta is going to be adapted so well. And I am like incredibly
I have more faith. I don't have complete and utter faith personally.
Well, I have about as much faith as I could have in an anime to live action adaptation.
Yeah.
Based on their track record of the first season, that I think that they know, having seen it all, I feel like I have confidence that they will cut the right things and leave the right things or shuffle the right things to make it interesting and to make it work for the live action format. However, you're right, there's so much going on in SKYPIEA and so many things that I feel like would need to be changed or just completely removed and skipped over, because I don't know, like I feel like it would be hard to keep SKYPIEA without just making it not SKYPIEA anymore. And it's not saying that SKYPIEA is terrible, but it's very like experiment. There's so many things that were different from all the previous arcs.
It's really wacky.
And it's wacky, and then it's also the thing of like, you know, with the different characters and the less emotional attachment from the audience. You know, how are we gonna, because we don't have Vivi, I wonder if maybe they would make Aisa more of a character, more attached to her, and like bring her more to the into
that's
our
gonna be difficult
hearts.
because then you need to have a child actor.
Yeah,
it's gonna suck.
Or is it, you know, making us like Conus a little bit more earlier on, because I did like her towards the end, but at first it was just kind of like, okay, there's this weird vibe going on with her. I also think like there is potential maybe if they, you know, make Wyper a little bit more likable a little bit more earlier on, because it's like it's an interesting character choice, and he's very strong because he is so like fixated, he's so dedicated, and later on we obviously find out why with his backstory, that he's kind of been tasked with this knowledge and stuff. But earlier on when he's just attacking the Straw Hats for no reason, it gets kind of annoying because you're like, okay, literally stop doing that. I don't know why you're attacking Zoro when Eneru is right there.
Just strategically. Not like, oh, why are you attacking our friends? No, strategically, they, like, why would you waste your effort on them?
And I said this the whole time. It's like, it's not that he isn't in the right to be wanting to kill Gonfall or wanting to attack the Straw Hats. It's like, that is completely valid based on like his personality
and his where he is, like even before learning the backstory. It's like, I understand why he would not like the Straw Hats, why, you know, it's his home, he's defending, like, you can understand that before any context, that's what that is, that they're territorial. That's established instantly. Like, and so that's understandable. And it is understandable kind of that he would attack, but it's not smart, and it doesn't make me respect him as like this badass fighter.
Yes.
You know, if you want to sell this guy as like a really good strategic, tactical, badass, strong fighter, the leader of this warrior tribe, you know, I know he's not like the elder, but still, he's like the leader of this warrior tribe. Like, show, you know, I don't know anyway, but that's the kind of thing that I'm following up on what you were saying. I think that's one of the things that I'm excited for the live action to dabble with, is having the freedom to streamline that part of it, and not be like shoot a rocket at Aisa and then be like, Aisa, no. Like, it's like, what the fuck are you talking about, man? Or like what we talked about is like sell the psychosis of it, the like the fucking ferocity of it, because I feel like he was like an angry guy. I'm Wyper, I'm angry. But he was like, I hope the live action kind of sells the sort of like fucking fiendish rage that's in him.
And I feel like that could be really good, because we already saw what they did for Buggy, and I feel like Buggy is a completely different character from the anime to the live action, but they work so well in their own mediums. And like same with Kuro and Sanji, and like there's a lot of strong choices being made in the casting and like the acting choices that I feel like make it so effective as a live action, and keep like the theatrical flair that anime tends to have, but dialed down a little bit, and certain other things turned up to the point that it makes it feel a little bit more natural, but doesn't lose everything. And I feel like kind of nailing Wyper would be key to making Skypiea work a little bit better. Also, because Eneru, I feel like he doesn't really have to change very much from anime to live action. Like he's just crazy, and it works. And you know what I mean? Like, I don't know. Like, I feel like there's a lot of potential, but it needs to be like so polished. Like the other things, it's just like, you know, I don't know. I feel like it'll be hard, but if it's done well, I think it could be fun.
I think that it depends, like how I will feel about Skypiea if they even make it that far. I'm not even convinced that the One Piece live action will make it to a season 3. I hope it does, because it's just good content, but like, and it's fun to watch. Like I said, I really like it, but just because it's Netflix, like they rarely give things past the season 3.
Yeah.
Anyway, I think whether or not I'll have more faith in Skypiea will have to do with how they handle the early Grand Line and Alabasta stuff. Specifically, like I guess specifically like that, how we see that turning point in like Chopper's arc and that turning point in Alabasta. Like there's a lot of One Piece arcs that is just exploring and kind of filling out the area. And then there's that turning point that I talked about earlier in the podcast and multiple times before, where like the real plot gets going. How they handle those types of things from a writing perspective and a pacing perspective is going to really determine, I think, how I feel about them doing Skypiea well or poorly. Because I think if they, I don't know, streamline it too much and remove all of the magic of the world, we don't see the fighting seals or whatever they were called. And we, we maybe won't, but whatever. Like how they need to keep so much of the story going past the East Blue is all about the flavor. It's all about like those intangibles that I think were okay to cut out in the East Blue because it was shit like Don Krieg and stuff like that. Those were like and like Hachi was kind of a loss, but it wasn't that big of a loss. It would have been cool to see Hachi and kind of funny maybe. Yeah. But like, the things that they cut out, I think like did sacrifice a bit of like the flair of One Piece, but there was a lot gained in streamlining it. But there still were things lost. I think that if they continue with that level of scrutiny towards everything, I think that it's going to be a little bit too different because so much of the journey going forward is about the journey and not about the destination, where like earlier on, doing Arlong Park the way they did, I think I really liked it.
Yeah.
And I don't know. It'll really depend. Well, we have to see more of the world of One Piece and how they handle the world of One Piece.
Like a little garden and
because like we talked about in the live action discussion, they did also do like the world a lot better, I think, in those early points. Like I think Baratier was really fucking cool in the live action, like all the locations and Syrup Village.
Yeah.
Was really good. There's so many places now. I'm starting to forget everything. I need to really brush up on my One Piece. There's a lot of things about the world and the details that were present. And like, even though a lot was lost, there was a lot that was gained, I guess. So I need to see more before I know if Skypiea is going to be good in the live action. But I don't know. Maybe it'll be good. It's going to be animated, basically. Yeah. We're just going to get another anime. We're going to have 3 One Piece animes going on at once. One's Netflix, one's Wit Studio, and one's... I've
seen a few questions. I won't find a specific one because like multiple people asked this, but people were asking if we would want the G8 arc to get to make it into the live action.
I think it would be really funny.
I think it'd be.
It's the exact kind of arc.
Condense it down into like
a movie or an hour
episode. Like I think you could condense it into an episode and just.
You'd have to cut out the mechanic guy
maybe
which was a lot
episodes.
of it.
I don't know. It was so fun, and I feel like I'll have to see what comes next to determine whether
they
or not
won't do it.
They won't do it, but determine whether or not I feel like it would make it better. Because I really I
just loved the arc as it was.
It was so good.
The arc was so good. The fucking like, when I tell you guys that episode 199, like that was the best. Like not about writing. Like some people in the comments at one point, I checked in the comments on YouTube and they were just like, "Oh fucking." What? Oh man! Like, why does he think that G8 arc is like the best? Or I think they mentioned both of us for once, and not just shitting on me. But they were like, "Why do you think it's the best?" And like, "Oh, apparently it's like their favorite." It's like the one episode of G8 as an anime episode was without a doubt the best anime episode of all of One Piece so far. It's not even close. It's like, it makes sense because it was directed by Mamoru Hosoda, which is one of our favorite directors, directed or made Wolf Children, which is one of our favorite movies ever. It's so good. He's awesome. He also did a Digimon movie. He also did a bunch of stuff, but he did, what was it? Boy and the Beast.
Did he do another One Piece movie too?
Oh yeah, he did. Right?
We haven't seen it yet. I don't know. I thought he did.
Oh yeah, I think that's true. Anyway, And apparently G8 was also supposed to be a movie,
Mm-hmm.
which makes sense because earlier on, or maybe even before, we compared it to the Power arc of Naruto, which is also supposed to be a movie, was turned into an arc. But this one, the Power arc seemed pretty much like it was just a movie, but just just put into episodes. This seems like it was supposed to be a movie. Like halfway through the production, they were like, let's just make it episodes instead. Just judging by like the spectrum of animation quality. Like at some points, it's like literally the best episode. Sometimes it's the worst shit I've ever seen, with Nami having hands the size of my fucking body. Yeah. Anyway. Such a good arc. So many good things about it.
And I think, like, just as a response, this wasn't asked on Patreon, but this was like the comments of people getting a little bit offended on behalf of Oda that we were saying that this arc was so good and one of the most enjoyable parts of One Piece so far. And I don't think that that's a diss at Oda.
It just shows our tastes, I guess.
To have someone else
write
an arc, and clearly the writers that made this arc have opposing strengths to Oda, and were able to incorporate so much like of the legwork that Oda already did in creating these characters and creating this world, and then we're able to add in something like a competent villain that wasn't just big bad guy. And it was also interesting to have he wasn't a villain. He was an antagonist. He was an antagonist. And then there was even another antagonist that was more like a villain of the Inspector
Shepherd,
guy.
Yeah. Condoriano.
Yes, an iconic character. But it felt a little bit more filled out because they were using so many things that were already in One Piece, but then adding in other things that Oda doesn't really focus on as much, at least at this point. And that's not saying like, oh, he's terrible because he never focuses on these things.
It's just different strengths.
Style.
Yeah.
And different writers
not
have
even strengths, just different approaches, just different values as a writer. You know, I feel like that's something I feel like I want to scream this from the rooftops at the start of every video that we make. Because whenever we start talking about writing quality, whenever we start talking, not even quality, whenever we start talking about writing or production or whatever you have or what have you, everyone jumps to like, oh, he thinks he can write better than Oda. Oh, he thinks that this shit terrible show is better than One Piece. It's like, I feel like everyone needs to understand that it's not always about fucking and not everything's a tier list. Not everything. I feel like because we get graded a certain way in school, we're like, oh, this person got an A and this person got a B. But it's like, not everything in life works that way. Writing doesn't always work that way. Not all of writing is like on a scale of bad to good, mid to peak. You know, like there's a spectrum, and it's not always about the quality. It's like something can be just as good as something else, but do different things and in different areas. It's just about, and it's not even necessarily about quality. If two authors write the same story, they'll approach it different ways, and they can both have equally good stories. But different parts, they will focus on different things.
Yes,
it's not about good or bad. It's not about yes or no. It's not about peak or mid. It's about writing is a process. It's an art form.
And it's different for everyone. And this is a little bit of like a sidetrack, but I was just thinking about this. So, like, obviously, George R.R. Martin is, like, one of the most, like, everyone knows about Game of Thrones. He's, like, an amazing writer, blah, blah, blah. There's also Brandon Sanderson, who's also super popular. He's made, like, 1 million books. He just fucking apparently writes every second of his life. And both of them are, like, majorly respected in their fields. But they're so different. And I watched an interview recently of Brandon Sanderson because he had finished writing another book series for a different author that I believe passed away before, and people have asked him like, would you finish Game of Thrones because you can just finish 1 million books a year, and Game of Thrones probably will never get finished. And he basically said that he wouldn't do it because his writing style and the things that he focuses on would ruin the story. Or not, he didn't say it like that, but it wouldn't be conducive to creating a good story in the Game of Thrones style and in that world. It's just, it wouldn't be right for him to do that, essentially, because it just wouldn't work. And I think that that's really interesting because it's like, you know, but the thing is that he did do that thing that people are asking him to do for Game of Thrones for a different series, but it was more in line with his approach and his outlook. And I think that, like, you know, it's the same thing. It's like you can be just as well respected or just as, you know, just as good, but it can be completely different. But that doesn't mean that, like, one is better than the other necessarily, or that, you know, this person sucks because they focus on more characters and this person focuses more on plot, or this person focuses more on prose. There's so many, like, classics of books that are, you know, you might think is boring because it's not written, it's beautifully written to the point that it's almost unenjoyable because of it's so prose heavy or so descriptive or so meandering. And that's part of it, but that doesn't mean that it's objectively terrible or bad. It's like with One Piece, it's so, you know, free flowing and has so much charm to it. But that doesn't mean that pointing out, oh, it's lacking in this or that I personally enjoy. That doesn't mean that that's saying that Oda can't write and he's a terrible writer.
Yeah.
It's just preferences and styles, and he clearly chooses to. I mean, we examine his writing style all the time and how he is building his world and forming his story and planning in advance, but also going with the flow. And it's so beautiful. But it doesn't mean that we're saying that his work is bad by saying that this filler arc was good and set in the One Piece world. It was just different and refreshing and fun and I think also part of it is it, you know, being written to be a movie. It feels tighter because it was supposed to be a movie, whereas Oda is writing like one of the freaking longest manga of all time. He's not trying to write the tightest story ever. But obviously, if you were writing a movie to set in One Piece, you would want it to be a tight story that ties up with a bow at the end. And, you know, it's different. And also not having to plan out for what happens after allows you to focus more and take more time in that filler arc to develop all these side characters that are really fun and have everyone, no one's, well, I mean, at one point, some people get locked up in jail, but we don't have that moment of Luffy getting incapacitated for 10 episodes because everyone's doing their own thing and in different areas and meeting up and going over here and going over there and getting the waiver and breaking into the guy's office. But the reason that it's able to be so compact is because of that the people making it don't have to think about anything that comes after. They just know we're on the octopus at the beginning, we're on the octopus at the end. That's it. We can do anything we want in the middle.
And again, yes, about thinking about what comes later, it's like I think people really do not. I think a lot of people have not tried. Like, you know, we're not accomplished writers or anything, but we enjoy it, and it's something that we appreciate doing. Like, if you've tried writing something, I think even just the experience of trying to write something and trying to think of things like that gives you a lot of perspective for like what it takes to do it. Like, if you never like tried to write a long form or tried to like plan out a longer narrative, then, you know, it all just, you know, whether something is long or short or what, you know, there's no context for it. But like, I think that people underestimate the strain and the difficulty of writing a story like One Piece week by week and still having the long-term payoffs that it's clearly setting up, you know? Yeah, I don't know. It's just it's something that's also something I mentioned before, but I actually agree with everything you said. Yeah, it's style is you know, it's subjective at the end of the day. That's the whole point of it. And it's just really fucking annoying to be existing in a world where like people just it's so binary. It's so like it's so good or bad. It's peak or mid, or it's fucking, you know, it's brain dead. It's totally, it just kills any fucking examination. And it's on one hand you can't blame it because most of the people who are thinking that way are literally children, and and that's just kind of comes with the territory, I guess. But it's like, I'm not just talking about One Piece fans either. And I know it's not everybody, obviously. That's how we have this channel, is because it's not everybody. But it's so annoying for that to be like the leading discourse in like everything. It's just like you can't even make fun of something without people, or you can't have fun with you can't have fun with the right thing in the wrong way. You can't anyway, I don't know why I get on all that. What I really want to talk about is going to the bathroom and then talking about poneglyphs.
Okay.
Let's do that. Alrighty. What now? Poneglyphs?
Yeah. Hold on. I don't know how to pronounce his name.
Can you see? Which one?
KW.
Kuaga, I think.
Asked, what are your thoughts and theories on Robin's Lost History storyline and the Poneglyphs?
Well, I think... Do you have any theories?
Why don't you say yours?
Because I want you to say yours first.
Okay, you think I'm going to copy you?
No, I just want to hear what you think without me telling you what I think.
Okay. I don't know. I think that it's really interesting. I especially like now that it's like linked up to Gold Roger. It just makes everything seem a little bit more like in line, because it was like, oh, everyone has their own thing, like Nami wants money and Sanji wants to find the all blue. Luffy wants the One Piece, blah, blah, blah. Zoro wants to, be the best sword guy and defeat Mihawk and all that stuff. So everyone has their own goals, but I feel like adding in Robin, and then we find out like she wants to find the lost history and all of the poneglyphs and stuff, and she's looking for them. It's like, that's cool, but I feel like being like, oh, Gold Roger already found all of these, just brings it to that next level of like, this is, it makes it feel even more important to the story, and just more important that they find all of them, that finding those will help them find the One Piece, or help them find, really retrace Gold Roger's footsteps, essentially, Mm-hmm. So I feel like it's interesting. I don't necessarily know what it all is when all of them are together and then it says something,
Yeah. Yeah, I don't know. I think, well, I shared my theory about the planets.
Right.
And that thing. I think that because we got there was Pluton, which is like Pluto, and then there's which was the other one? It was Neptune, but it was what's the other one?
What do you mean, the other one? Poseidon?
Yes. It was was it Poseidon or something like that? It was a similar, like, it might have literally been Poseidon.
I think so. It was, or very similar.
Yeah. Anyway, so there's those two, and that's now forming a pattern because it's Poseidon, Pluton. So those, it may be doing planets, and that would be a similar. So part of why I think that this might be the direction that Oda is going in is because there were seven warlords, and then Gold Roger is like around the same number of things. Because like I'm just thinking like it's not 7 and 9 they're basically the same. No, it's like it's like imagine you're an author and you're like, I need a long-term like bunch of goalposts that the characters can go through of like finding out this information and like finding a sequence of it, or finding these things, or encountering this many people before getting to the end. It gives you kind of a track of sort of an expectation for the audience. So it's not like the same amount of things. Like there's 9 planets and then the sun, so it's 10. And I guess Eneru's gone to the moon. Maybe that'll come up again. I'm not sure. Probably not. Hopefully it will. I don't know. Maybe. Anyway, so say it's just kind of like, if it is going with planets, that's something also that like kids would know about. So like if you're like, okay, I need to like kind of set this up so that like everybody can kind of follow me along on this. And there's also, that expectation for the future. And there's, 10-year-olds or 12-year-olds reading this, and, they know about planets. So if I kind of write it this way, then they'll kind of be along the ride with me. I'm explaining this really poorly, but basically it's just that I think that all the poneglyphs are going to, whether they're going to, well, because Pluton is a thing that can be found by one of the poneglyphs, right? Like it's a weapon that or some sort of powerful thing. Maybe there's going to be 9 of those representing each of the planets, and then there's going to be like the final boss of it all, the sun god or something. That's like, the final boss of One Piece, or a real badass of some kind that's going to be along the way. Or maybe we'll get through all of that, and then past that will be the final boss. How Gold Roger fits into all that, I have no fucking idea. I guess he just found everything. He's leaving the scavenger hunt for everybody to go along. I guess that's kind of fitting with what he did with the One Piece. So and then there's the blank century or the blank history or whatever it is. Mm-hmm. That was, I forget, I need to look up what they said the timeline on that was, but 400 years ago was the Shandians, and then it was like, what, 200 something years ago?
I think another 400 years before that, because I thought 800. It was 800 years
right.
total since Shandora, like, got wrecked
fell,
in the first
but I don't know,
place.
I didn't know if I guess it would technically be connected, because the Shandians had to guard the Poneglyph. That was their one thing.
Yeah.
I don't know. Anyway, I don't know about the timeline. Gold Roger, I guess, probably if Pluton and Poseidon or whatever they are, and if there are indeed 9 of them, whatever they are, whatever they do, if they are objects, maybe they all together make up the key to getting to the One Piece, is what I'm thinking. They're all like the Dragon Balls, essentially. They're all like, Pluton has this, and maybe it'll be like Deltora, and like each of them has one different power, and maybe they're all devil fruit, like Apex devil fruit, and they all give you a certain different power, like Deltora, basically, if you don't know, it's Lindsay's like favorite thing ever, and there's a bunch of gems, and they all fit in a belt. And each gem has a different superpower, and you put them in the belt, and then the person, like the king or the descendant of the rulers, can like use all of the powers together, and he's like a god person.
Well, they're not really like powers.
In a way, they are.
Yeah.
Anyway, so like, maybe it's something like that. Maybe he'll switch it around, and maybe there's not 9. I'm going with the idea that they do represent the planets, just because that's an easy like connection to make. But I don't know. Maybe they're not even, maybe they're like an artifact, like something that you can hold. Maybe they're a big machine. Maybe they're a devil fruit, like I said. Or maybe they're a person, and they're not even an object. I don't know. I'm getting the idea that they, like, devil fruit seems like it makes the most sense, but I don't know. I don't know. I think that's the closest that I can get to it. As far as what the fucking blank century or the blank history, I forget if they ever said century, if I'm just making that up. I think at some point in Alabasta they said century, or that there's 100 years of missing time or something like that. But they say the blank history. I'll say the blank history. I don't know. I have 0 idea what that could mean, other than if there are a bunch of artifacts or powerful things relating to the planets, they, being that it's a Japanese story, and we talk about disaster fiction all the time. I mentioned that when we learned about Pluton as well. Maybe it's from maybe the history was deleted after a big cataclysm, after a big disaster of some kind, like a nuclear explosion, as a corollary to the real life Hiroshima Nagasaki type thing, because that's left a scar on Japan that is still healing to this day, and maybe will never heal. It's a big cultural moment for them, and all of their history with natural disasters and stuff that seeps into Japanese media all the time. I think my best guess as to what the blank history is it's something relating to that, something relating to all the poneglyphs, is like a code for the person who's worthy, or the people who are worthy, to have gone through and experienced the whole world, to acquire all of this knowledge, who are skilled enough to do it. They're probably good enough people to have made it that far. Otherwise, they would have died, because they don't have the dreams that Luffy is saying. They don't have that commitment to life and the zest for adventure. And, you know, in order to make it as far as we have thus far, you have to have a good heart like Luffy. So the idea is, if you go on this big journey and there's all these things to find, and Gold Roger found all of them, and he wants, maybe he doesn't even care. I don't know. We don't know enough about Goldie Roger. You know, at the end of it is the One Piece, which is like maybe the most powerful thing, or maybe the One Piece is again like the friends we made along the way, but also there are, you know, all of these powerful artifacts, weapons, whatever. And you can only make that far if you're someone like Luffy, where you have a good heart and you are the right person to have found it, perhaps. What else was I going to say about that? Yeah, I don't know. And yeah, and so then the reason why it's all hidden is maybe it was a deliberate thing by the world government, or some sort of ancient version of the world government. And that's why they have the warlord system, because they take all the most powerful guys and then they give them everything they want, keep them fat and happy, so they don't go out and search out the Poneglyphs, find the One Piece, or find all the Pluton and all that shit, all these super powerful items. If they don't want people to find them because they want control, maybe the Navy's lust for power and control and sort of desire to control everything isn't totally malicious. Maybe it's a lesser of two evils thing, where they take all the most powerful pirates. And that's maybe why Whitebeard's not a warlord, I didn't think. He's outside of it. Maybe that's why they don't like Whitebeard and why they don't like Shanks. Because these powerful guys are like, with this zest for adventure, they are closer to finding all of this shit than they would like. And if Crocodile is trying to find the Poneglyph, trying to find Pluton, that's okay. Because if Crocodile finds it, we know what he's doing, at the very least. So we can keep an eye on him and make sure that he's not, misusing it, or, that he doesn't get too close to the truth. So either it's a deliberate thing from the world government to keep all this shit hidden, to make sure that people don't get too close to the truth, because they are hiding the truth. They're the ones who erased all the history. Either one. Either they erased all the history, or they're trying to make sure that whatever cataclysm happened, that it doesn't happen again by getting into the wrong hands. And maybe that's what Blackbeard will be going forward. Is he'll be sort of like, because he's like the dark side of Luffy, where he's searching out all the shit, and Luffy's getting closer to the Poneglyphs and closer to the truth and closer to this greater power that's not supposed to be found by normal people. But Luffy's a good guy, and he has the pirate spirit. Blackbeard has the same pirate spirit, and he's looking for the same shit. He's looking for the same kind of glory, in a way, kind of. He wants like that power, and he has the similar kind of dreams. But he's also a bad guy. He's not a great person. He's kind of, again, that dark side to Luffy. So maybe that's what will be sort of. I hope all that makes sense. Does all that kind of make sense? Or
yeah,
do you not understand what I'm saying at all?
No, I understand what you're saying. I'm just thinking about it because it's a lot. And I still don't really know what exactly I think about it, because there's just so. They're like we've been learning about poneglyphs and stuff, but even still, I feel like there is so much that we don't know, and so much of that is mysterious, and I don't know, and like the way that it's framed, or like there's like the Pluton thing, and like how it's like, oh, this is like telling us where to find that, basically, but. Then now there's like the thing of like, oh, if you like put them all together, then it like tells something completely different about the blank history or whatever. It's I feel like it's all really, really interesting, but I feel like I need like a little bit more before I can like be more confident or start like really thinking of theories. Even possibly a little bit more of Robin's backstory could influence that, or like how she, how she like decided that this was going to be her thing that she was going to pursue forever,
I think of what the Poneglyph said. It said like, speak not of blah blah. Basically, what it said was, you don't need to know why you need to defend this, but it is very important that you keep this secret and you let nobody get close to this. That was kind of like what it was. It was like, do not talk to a woman. Do not let anyone near this. You defend it with your life until the right person comes along or whatever, right? Am I making that up? Because once Robin found it, it didn't matter anymore that they were defending it because they found it.
Yeah.
And then Roger wrote on it, oh, you're getting close. And I think that'll be a similar thing going forward where, like, yeah, it's either because there was an old cataclysm, there was an old disaster that caused them to want to hide everything, or everything got deleted, and then the few people who emerged from the fucking ashes of whatever happened inscribed all of this in the poneglyphs and then sent them across the world. And, you know, Shandians, you guard this. Maybe we'll meet another group of people like that, or another tribe or whatever. You know, I feel like we're onto something there. Because I guess the why I'm thinking about this in this kind of trajectory is because that's just kind of how stories go. It's like we start out small. We start out with our friends. We're going on an adventure. We start out with personal stakes. You know, we got Luffy's brother over here. We got Shanks out there. We got obviously we know about Garp because of the live action. You know, we're still relatively connected to like our part of the world, and then we go to SKYPIEA, and that turned out to be not as big of a thing as it maybe would have been if we were in the original form of One Piece. But like, we're also like, it's gonna keep ramping up, and if they're introducing like, oh, there's a great power out there. It's, you know, I'm not just, okay, I'm about to do something that people really don't like that we do. And, but it's not because this is like the only thing that I'm thinking about when I'm thinking about this. In Naruto, there are the tailed beasts, and when you bring them all together, you get like the 6 paths power, and it's the 10 tails. And now there's that power that one person can hold, and they have the power to like they have a choice. They could do really fucking terrible thing, or they can, you know, make things the way they are. The same thing, similar things happen in, shit, I don't want to spoil everything. Full Metal Alchemist, similar thing happens in Evangelion, similar thing happens in, you could say Berserk, but not quite. It's not quite the same thing. It's kind of also a different genre. You could think of a million things. It's you know, it's Dragon Ball, like same thing. I already mentioned that, but like, you know, the difference here is it's more focused in One Piece. It's more focused on the world, on the history. You know, in Naruto, the history and everything about the tailed beast is kind of an afterthought.
Terrible.
It's like, if you're a crazy Naruto stan, you probably really love all the background lore and stuff, but the background lore feels like it was like, oh, there needs to be some kind of meaning that ties us back into the story, so I need to...
The ancient history of 10 years ago.
Yeah, exactly. It's like, oh, the first Hokage, the legendary warrior of history. It's like, oh, really? Yeah, he's that lady's grandfather. So, like, he was probably around. If he didn't die early, he probably would have been, you know, he was a healer. He probably could have lived a little bit extra. I don't know why he kicked the bucket so quick. He could be around right now. I don't know. Anyway, so back to One Piece. It's like, in One Piece, unlike that, and unlike a lot of other stories, because it's a mystery and because there's so much ahead of us, it becomes worth theorizing about, really. You know, it becomes less of I'm
just going to predict this thing based off of other knowledge. And
well, it just becomes more of an adventure, I guess.
Yeah.
Like, it becomes more worth it to think about, you know, like, rather than, just, oh, what is fucking Kishimoto going to do this time? Is there going to be another set of brothers that are, you know, hostile and have a power that they both have or something, you know, like, and they both represent this idea and that idea, and there's just this ladder with a rung connecting each pole as it goes along all the way down. with One Piece, there's, because I know, like, you know how it's so long, and like there's so much ahead of us. We've covered a decent amount already, but like the fact that it's all hidden, and the fact that there's still we're 200 episodes into the show, and like we still don't know where this ship is going. We do not know what the fuck is gonna happen. The only thing we can draw on is just our experience with storytelling and previous stories.
But even still, with the way that Oda just kind of goes with the flow or tries more adventurous things that other authors probably wouldn't do, it also just makes it extremely difficult because, I feel like there's, in a lot of other stories, it's like, oh, I can kind of see where this is going. And there might be a couple of twists and turns, but you can get the idea. After 200 episodes, you can get the idea of like patterns or themes or where it's going to go. But especially after Skypiea, it's like, okay, we can just literally do anything at any time with like the gun eating the dog.
In Alabasta, you mean?
In Alabasta, yeah.
Yeah.
No, I meant like in Skypiea, just in general, we can do whatever we want. And then plus like plus his consistency in removing the rules and just doing whatever. It's like, it's very fun to theorize, but it's also just like you can't really do it based purely off of, oh, this would make sense for the plot, because it doesn't have to make sense.
Yeah.
He just has to want to do it.
Exactly. Yeah. Mm-hmm. Do you know, what do you think about, I guess we could probably end it off with this. Will of D, what's your updated idea about that? I have a pretty solid of idea of what I think it is. I don't know whether it's true, but I think we probably have the same idea.
I feel like I haven't even thought about it in a while.
I think that it's simple. It's like, it's not a crazy thing. Either it means nothing, and it's just, maybe it's an artifact from the blank history or something like that. Probably. Maybe it originates at that point. That seems to be like the ancient time. That's the Heian era. That's the fucking, the era of the first Hokage, or whatever you want to say, like that's the ancient times. That's the period in the past and stuff like that where things originate. It seems like maybe there's also way earlier, but I think that it's either nothing and just nothing. Like maybe people with D are all descended from one person, and that's it. It's literally, it doesn't have any meaning, or it is some sort of like will of destiny, will of deity or something. Mm-hmm. Maybe some sort of bastardization of that word, because Oda likes to do that. Like say Pluton, for example, like, it's Pluto, but with an N on the end, or like shit like that. Like, because Oda, we've talked about before, where Oda is actually knowledgeable about other languages. He's not just using a word from a language because he thinks the writing is cool, like some authors do. Like, he has awareness of the things that he is putting into the story when they're in other languages. It's a deliberate, and it's well thought out, and has multiple meanings to it when he uses other words from other languages. So there's a sort of linguistic awareness there that a lot of manga authors don't put in the effort to have. So it could mean something else, or it could just be the will of destiny, and it's just that simple. Or I think honestly, it might be being built up like it's really something, but I have a feeling it's just like the One Piece. I have a feeling it's being built up so much, and then there's gonna be a little twist at the end, and then it's gonna be, oh, well, that thing you thought meant something, that actually doesn't mean anything. But look where we ended up, type thing. Mm-hmm. Like, that's kind of...
Yeah, I feel like, I don't know, you have to know a little bit more about it, because it's just like, okay, people just name their kid. Like, it's not like some fairy godmother as far as we know, comes flying out of the sky and is like, I'm going to add a middle initial of D to your child's name. They will be blessed with great adventure and fortune. Goodbye. Like, like that. As far as we know, that's not something that happens.
We also don't know how fucking names work in One Piece.
Yeah, well, I was going to say, like, so we have people like Dr. Reen who's like, oh, yeah, Goldie Roger. Oh, I guess they're just calling him Gold Roger now. And so it's like, okay, so naming someone with a D used to like mean something, and people kind of knew what it meant, and then over time it just kind of got forgotten about, I guess. Or maybe people think that it's good luck, or certain families or certain areas thought like, oh, if I name my child, it's like if you name your child a certain name, just their first name or whatever, that means something to like kind of destine their life to take the certain path that you want it to take, or to make sure that they are like being like magic's not the right word, but like destined to have something, to have a good life, because you're giving them a strong name or a name that means something about them, or you know what I mean. And I feel like that's very common. It's like you name in like any fantasy or anything, it's like, oh, this, I'm naming you this to like instill you with this. And I'm not sure if it's just that was just a naming convention of like, it's good luck to name your child with the middle initial, or maybe it's more like if you do that, then they will like achieve great things, but something bad might happen, or or there's like some type of curse associated with like people wouldn't do that because they're scared of what that means, because if they have that, then they will seek adventure and then they will leave and you will never see them again. Like you know what I mean? Like I'm not sure if it's like a old wives' tale kind of naming convention of superstitious belief, and that just happens to come true. You know what I mean? Because we're not seeing like Buddy down running the corner store with a D initial, but we wouldn't know his, we might not know if he had that. There might be like 1 million people like lying around that are whatever D something, and we don't know, but it's just a bias that since we keep seeing it pop up, it's like if you see whatever, like certain famous people, and you're like, oh, they all like had this one feature, and then it's like, okay, well, there's millions of people in the world that have that same thing, or they were all born on the same day. It's like, there's millions of people born on that day. There's only so many days to choose from. Yeah, and that doesn't mean that because of this they were destined for that. It's just like
that's coincidental. What I mean. It might be coincidental. That's what I meant by like it actually means nothing, and it's just it is like a bias or something. I think that's fully possible, I think that, it feels like, but it does kind of feel like, you never played Fallout New Vegas, but in Fallout New Vegas, when you're making, and other games too, you're making a character and you get to choose like, your perks. Mm-hmm. And then there's one at the bottom of the list called Wild Wasteland where you get like basically random shit will happen at random times. And like there's scripted events in the game, but like, you'll walk around a corner in the city one time, and then like 3 grannies will run up and start beating you with rolling pins, wearing pink dresses and stuff like that. And it's just like totally fucking random. Or you walk in the wasteland, and you see a fridge with Indiana Jones's hat in it, because like when Crystal Skull gets in the fridge during the blast or whatever, shit like that. And that's what it feels like with D. It's like when you're having a kid, it's like so I'm in the character creation menu for my child. If I put D, they get access to DLC content in the world. And but it could go wrong, it could go good. You can't really say. But I'm putting in video game terms. But one of the things that I really like about Oda so far is that he doesn't think about things in video game terms, at least in the story, most of the time. It's not video game logic. That's a big fucking pet peeve of mine these days with anime, where every author is like a gamer, so they think of things like games. They don't think of things like stories, like a narrative. They think of fights as if they're video game fights, and people have health bars and stamina bars or shit like that. Anyway, so I'm putting in video game terms. I don't actually think it is exactly like that, but I don't know. I think Will of D probably just a bias. Maybe if it means anything, it probably just means destiny, and it's passed down maybe from blank history. Maybe it has something to do with that. Maybe it doesn't. Maybe maybe blank history isn't actually that big of a deal, and I'm just projecting it because it's part of Robin's story. But it seems like it's kind of a big deal.
I think it is. I think you could say that it wouldn't be a big deal, but I think in the story, them tying it to Gold Roger,
yes, like you
proves
said,
that it is a big deal. I think that like that is very critical because like Sanji wants to see the all blue, like that's a place that we're like hoping to see, but we don't have evidence of Gold Roger loved the all blue and he went there and he lived there. So, and that's where the One Piece is. But we do have Gold Roger vandalizing, writing Gold Roger was here on the Poneglyph, which then it ups the importance, because the whole thing is like there's the One Piece and Gold Roger, and that's like the star we're reaching for. So tying him directly to the Poneglyphs, and I also feel like Robin being added to the crew and having that be her thing, I think he had an idea of like what he wanted, and then he's like, okay, we're gonna bring in this new character, and this is gonna be her thing, and then we're gonna tie it in to the main plot even more substantially,
Yeah, 100%. I feel the same way.
Because at first I was like, oh, the Poneglyphs are kind of cool, but like I don't love them, or I'm not like I want to know about them. But I'm not like dying to see the next.
You know what I will say about the Poneglyphs is I'm glad it wasn't just another big cube. Or was it? Am I misremembering the one in Shandia? It was a big like tablet.
Yeah.
Right? But like the one in Alabasta was like it felt like, and actually maybe it's because of the filler I'm thinking of it like this. But in the filler, there's the Poneglyph that they stumbled upon underground randomly, and it was a big cube, and then it went to in the tombs or whatever, and it was another big cube, and I was like, oh, we're just gonna be going searching for the giant cubes all over the place. But I'm glad that like the Poneglyph could just be a piece of text on anything, really,
like built into a monument rather than just standing by itself.
I like that a lot, actually, because it, I won't just be like, oh, are there any giant cubes out there in the One Piece world? We're looking at the bottom of the ocean. Is there a giant cube down there? Oh, well, we don't need to look down there, The fact that it's still, it kind of makes it a little bit, I don't know, it's just a very small thing, but yeah. I actually appreciate that a lot. Anything else you want to say?
I think that's pretty much it. I think we had talked a lot more than I thought we were.
Yeah, we definitely did. I thought this was going to be like a sub-hour long one, but we ended up talking a lot. I guess because we talked a lot more about things outside of SKYPIEA, really.
Yeah.
SKYPIEA as an arc. Final thoughts on SKYPIEA as an arc after this podcast.
I think the memory of SKYPIEA is better than the experience of SKYPIEA.
I absolutely agree
I
with
think,
that.
To be completely honest, that can be said about most of One Piece.
100%. Well, that can be said about a lot of
that. Can also be said about Naruto, everything,
and Dragon Ball.
Exactly. So it's not a bad thing. I completely feel the same way about Naruto.
It's about what it means to you.
Yeah, but I think SKYPIEA definitely felt it was a little bit painful to watch at certain moments, but then every time that it got too much, like when it brought back freaking Satori's brothers and it was just like, oh my god, but then they just like got rid of them instantly, and I was like, thank fucking god we don't have to deal with another
Fat
ball
marshmallow
ordeal
shanks.
of this guy's. It's like every time that I feel like we were like, okay, I'm getting kind of annoyed, then they would pick up the pace.
Yeah.
So I think like overall it wasn't the worst. It could have been a lot better.
Could have been a lot
better. I think honestly the best thing about it is what it's going to do for the story going forward. I think that this needed to happen in order for what's going to come next to be even better. Like a little bit of a trial run, a little bit of introducing a bunch of new ideas, a little bit of you know what I mean?
Mixing
like
things up
trying new things that were a little bit different than before. So I feel like there's a lot of really good stuff going on. But it is not my favorite arc.
Yeah, I'm glad it's over. It was not the best arc. There were a lot of things that I loved about it. Yeah. The one thing that I'm worried about is that a lot of people talk about this in the context of skipping it. And I think that's because like it's pretty separated from the world.
I think like if you were rewatching, then you might watch like certain episodes or just be like, I remember what happens. I don't need to like, like if say I was to rewatch and I was like, oh my god, like I'm not watching the ball ordeal again. You know?
Fuck no. I don't think I'll ever watch that again. I might watch the couple dialogue scenes for reference when
or
they're sailing around.
flashbacks of Calgara and Nolan.
Oh yeah,
and
definitely.
like that the stuff that is like lore and stuff, but a lot of the silly nonsense I don't think I would bother to watch again, or even want to, or just fast forward through it or something. I don't know.
Yeah. So like I can and on the topic of skipping, because that was like it was like in every comment section is like, oh, you can't believe people skip this. I don't know how many people actually do, but I feel like it's a weird thing to hear from One Piece community that they skip shit, which makes me think that like a lot of the shit does not matter, like as far as like going forward, other than the lore, like all the stuff with the Sky Islanders and stuff like that. It's like kind of divorced from the rest of it. So like the fact that One Piece fans who are like so into look at this world that Oda made, look at like all this stuff we get to experience. I skipped that shit. Fuck that. Like it just kind of it's a huge like gap between those two things. So it'll be really interesting to see how it fits into the story going forward, is how I kind of feel about it. But I'm glad it's over, and I'm glad that it had a pretty good conclusion, I think.
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah. Just like this podcast had a good conclusion.
Yeah.
You want to take it away, Lindsay?
Bye, everybody.
No leave a like and subscribe. No checking out Patreon. No check.
Nope. Goodbye.